Hey everyone, I'm Ashleigh Banfield, and this is Drop Dead Serious. It is no secret that the LAPD has been beyond tight-lipped about the investigation into a missing teenage runaway who was found dead in a famous singer's Tesla. But they are releasing a few new details right now, and as of this recording, it is November the 24th. In particular, the LAPD is throwing some cold water, a lot of it, on explosive reporting that just came out this weekend. You know, all the details about the decomposing remains of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, a runaway teenager who turned up dead in the Tesla of a popular singer named David. This weekend, there was a bombshell, a bunch of reporting that Celeste's body had likely been frozen, possibly frozen for months before being transferred to the trunk of the Tesla. Sources told several outlets that Celeste had been decapitated, that her limbs had been removed from her torso, cut into pieces, and then apparently stored in a freezer. Tonight, the captain of the Robbery Homicide Division of the LAPD tells People magazine that the reports are not true. Captain Scott Williams tells People that Celeste was not frozen and that, quote, Celeste was not decapitated. The whole frozen thing doesn't even make sense. Her body was in the car for weeks, he said. And he added, quote, even if she had been frozen solid when she was put in the car, which there is no evidence to suggest that she was, 5 or more weeks in the trunk of a car in sweltering heat in the middle of summer would have not resulted in a partially frozen body being discovered on September 8th, end quote. Tonight, the LA Medical Examiner's Office, the people who did the autopsy on Celeste, they say they're being officially barred by court order from saying anything about her death. And that it was the LAPD that asked the court to do that, to gag the ME. And if you find that outrageous, like I do, the ME is not thrilled about this either. The LAPD requested what's called a security hold, and a judge okayed it. But the ME says a security hold is, quote, virtually unheard of in other counties, end quote, and counter to the mission of, quote unquote, full transparency at the ME's office. So what on earth is it that the police don't want us to know? All I can tell you is that the gag order coincides with all this explosive reporting about Celeste being frozen and decapitated, etc. Now, you should know last week we also told you that David, the singer, her boyfriend, older boyfriend, is now officially considered a suspect. But TMZ is reporting as well that cops have their eyes on a second suspect who may have been involved, quote, before, during, and after Celeste's death. That's a lot. The outlet says police are focusing on a quick trip that David made in the middle of the night to a remote location in Santa Barbara County. That was back in the spring. And TMZ says the police are focusing on that location as possibly being where the girl was killed. Remember, Celeste was discovered September 8th, and only then because of a terrible smell that was coming from the trunk of the Tesla. Earlier on my NewsNation show, I spoke with Dr. Michelle Dupree. She's a retired forensic pathologist, a former medical examiner, and also someone very, very knowledgeable about questions like, what happens to a body if you freeze it? Here's our conversation.
First and foremost, you're not going to get partially frozen body parts at the ME's office if there was a stench coming from the trunk. That would have been a long thawed, long decomposing body. But I do want to ask you if there might be some partial truth to this, that possibly those body parts had been frozen long ago and then had decomposed in the back of the trunk. If that part might be true, what does that do to a medical examiner trying to determine what happened with this body that they've received? What was the cause of death? Would freezing do something to that body?
Absolutely, freezing would. And it is possible that the body was frozen, and then, of course, after 5 weeks would not be frozen when found. But freezing actually damages the cells. It also actually speeds up decomposition once it starts to thaw. Anything that is blunt trauma, a gunshot wound, sharp force injuries, something like that, that would still be available. We would still see that at the autopsy. But anything that might be subtle, such as strangulation or something of that nature, would be much, much more difficult if the body had been frozen. And again, of course, once it's so badly decomposed.
I've got 5 seconds left. We had so much breaking news off the top of this program. I just have to ask you how unusual this is that the LAPD asked a court to block the medical examiner from releasing any details.
It is very unusual. Transparency is part of it, but it is not unheard of. If they really think it's going to affect the investigation, then it's warranted.
So listen, that conversation with Dr. Dupree is all fascinating. And the reason I wanted to have that conversation is that I'm not 100% sure that the LAPD has knocked down the story completely that Celeste's remains had been frozen at some time. 100% they did not show up frozen or partially thawed to the medical examiner. Absolutely not. I mean, it doesn't take a medical examiner to be able to explain how decomposition and odor works. I mean, just take hamburger out of your fridge, leave it on your counter or your freezer. Just take hamburger out of your freezer and leave it on your counter. It's going to take a long time before it starts to smell, to the point where you can smell it everywhere, right? It's going to thaw first, completely, and then decompose and smell. And it would be the same thing with the remains in the trunk. The neighbors were smelling it. They thought it was a dead animal. They called the police about the car, right? So those remains were thawed and decomposing, definitely, if they were ever frozen. And when those remains in the front trunk ended up at the impound lot, they were advanced in decomposition, and the impound lot smelled it and called the cops. So I never for a moment believe that any of the reports suggesting that they were partially frozen when the ME got them. It's impossible. It's impossible, right? I'm not 100% certain that at one point that girl's body had not been frozen. But it's pretty amazing that the LAPD will speak to just one outlet, People Magazine, and nobody else. We've tried a lot to get that same captain on the phone just to confirm or deny certain reports. No answer, not talking. So People Magazine has an in, and they got that report exclusively. But I want to tell you something else. A lot of people corroborated the reports this weekend about the frozen body parts, the decapitation, the limbs being cut up. That was a lot of media outlets using their sources to get confirmation. So it's very, very strange that there are sources confirming all of this and one captain of the robbery homicide unit at the LAPD knocking it all down. Or did he knock it all down? Again, I'm going to leave an open question here. I'm going to be open-minded as to the possibility that that poor girl may have been frozen at some point, but certainly not when she was found. No way in hell did she have any body parts that were still frozen when the LAPD opened up that frunk in David's Tesla. Obviously, still so many questions that we want answered, and hopefully some answers soon, because as the months go on, I think it becomes very frustrating for people who see this as pretty simple. There's a dead girl decomposing in your trunk, and you're not talking at all. You're not even sad about it, and she's your underage girlfriend. Yeah, I get it. I'm there with you. Why no arrest? We'll continue to watch it. Don't forget to subscribe so that when stuff breaks, you'll have it. I'm so appreciative that you're here. Thank you so much for listening and watching. And remember, the truth isn't just serious. It's drop dead serious.